So, just over $200 million has gone from Cetus's liquidity pools. Damn. Time to call the insurance broker and make a claim. Just play it cool on the phone, right? Wrong, of course. In crypto, the exploit is just the first shot fired, the ambush that takes you off guard. Keep your head up, and you'll find that the attacker still has a long road ahead of them to navigate their massive bag through the ecosystem and cash out. And that ecosystem, well, it isn't inclined to make things easy. When every validator and every stakeholder is against you, every second counts to get your bag out before you get frozen, or worse. This is the story of an ecosystem coordinating to recover the funds it lost. But how does that happen? And what does that mean when acting together, it can seize tokens from an address? We're glad to be back and philosophizing. Just please don't ask us how liquidity pools work again. This is Not Your Crypto Podcast. Hello and welcome back to Not Your Crypto Podcast with myself, Justin and Michael. Sorry for the extended break. It wasn't planned, but summer is being what summer is. So today we're not going to do a what have you been reading, if that's normally our technical tangential discussion. We're going to go straight in because we've left you hanging for this third part. So first of all, let you say hello from Michael.
Hello from me.
He's still alive. He's still kicking as well. But yes, so Cetus part 3. So I don't know if you've been listening to our previous 2 podcasts, but this is basically a 3-parter, our first ever 3-parter, in which we discuss what happened to a liquidity protocol on the Sui blockchain called Cetus. Effectively, it was one of the largest hacks to date, one of the largest hacks of this year. And basically, the Cetus liquidity pools were all drained. What does that mean? Long story short, Cetus is almost like an exchange and a liquidity provider on the Sui blockchain. This year, someone discovered a key vulnerability in one of its key libraries that allowed them to exchange tokens and withdraw a bunch of tokens equivalent to a dollar amount, a very large dollar amount. I think we're looking at 240 million, but at the same time, they exchanged it into different tokens, which have now, if you've been paying attention to the news recently, the last couple of weeks, have gone on a bull run. So the value is fluctuating. But it was very clever, and that's what drew Michael and I to it, like moth to flames. We thought it was a very intelligent hack. Still, stealing is bad, but it was still very intelligent in what they did and how they executed it. And the more interesting part of this was us understanding, or trying to get our heads around understanding what liquidity pools are in the first place in a decentralized world. So that was, go on, sorry.
Just don't ask us to explain it again after the break.
Oh, please, no, not gone. Without a coffee. Yes. And so effectively part 1 was outlining exactly what a liquidity pool is, what it does, and how it can be abused, or how it was abused. The part 2 was was for our technical friends out there, or specifically our security professionals out there as well, security and minded people, where we actually discussed what the bug was. It was known as an integer overflow bug. So if you were around in your textbooks back in 2010, or maybe even 2000, you will know that bug very well. It was a blast from the past, and it was a doozy in terms of how they used it to exploit the liquidity pools and repeatedly drain basically stacks of cash. So those were our first 2 episodes. And this third final episode is about what happened after they executed the attack. Bear in mind, this attack took place over 15 minutes before the incident response teams at Cetus got involved, which is an insanely quick response time, as anyone who works in the Web 2 world will be able to tell you, and stop it in its tracks. The twist at the end of episode 2, where we left you, was that the attacker didn't get the cash. Well, they didn't get most of it. So if we're looking at 240 million or so forth, or a range of 220 to 260, depending on who you ask and what the token prices are on a day, they got probably less than 3% of that. I don't even know if they even got that. And why is that? Well, this was the most interesting plot twist in the story. So effectively, at the time of our research, it was around 60. There were 2 major splits in terms of how they were trying to offboard or launder or exfiltrate these tokens. They took some and they bridged it onto another chain called Ethereum, one of the most famous chains in the world. And then they took the others and they were basically trying to sell the tokens on the network, as far as my understanding is, in order to exchange it for another token to then offboard that. 60 million was transferred to another Ethereum chain. Those wallets were flagged very quickly, and law enforcement around the world was contacted. And so they effectively went on a sanctioned list that actually does exist in the decentralized world, which means basically most exchanges will not interact it. So if you think of a legalized exchange such as Binance or Bybit or OKX or Kraken, Coinbase, and if they ever see any transactions with those wallets, they won't touch them. And so effectively that makes the person who owns those wallets' life a lot harder to exfiltrate those tokens. 60 million, which is now, I think at current price of Ethereum now around 80 to 90 million, is still sitting in those wallets. You can still go and access those wallets to this day. I'll put the link in the show notes. It's there. So in wallet 1, there is 2,843.99 F, and in wallet 2, there is 20,000. So that's one tranche set of money. Basically, that's that 60 to 80 million split over 2 wallets, all in F. Then there's a remaining $162 million, depending on what token it's in, but that's just the dollar denominated version of it, where things got very interesting. I'm going to hand it over to Michael as to why they got interesting now, because this, again, callbacks to a bunch of episodes now. We're just going to have, the more episodes we record, the more callbacks we're going to have, because we're just geniuses. We just call this out before it happens.
Like a long novel series where everything kind of comes back up again, recurring,
right? So I'll let you take it from here. What happened with that other $162 million?
Okay. We can go through the timeline, I guess.
Yeah, let's do that.
So the overall timeline starts before the attack, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Because so the attack is on May 22nd.
Correct.
I have the dates. I have the dates in my notes here, so we're gonna be good. We're gonna be able to call that out.
Perfect.
A few days before is when kind of the first like footprint of the attacker's activity is, which is seeding the contract that they're going to use with some gas. So there's a few days preparation period. Then May 22nd, the attack happens. So it starts. I was going to say in the morning, but that depends on where you are.
Where you are. It's probably
in the morning, North American time. I think in the morning, like European time too. Anyway, it starts. I have all the timestamps in UTC, like a good little security. good little security boy here. Okay, so the attack starts around 10:30 UTC. There is a little blip before that where there's like a failed contract transaction. A few hours before, so maybe they tried something and it didn't work or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess. But yeah, starts around 10:30. And we talked in the earlier episodes about how very quickly it gets picked up on, very quickly in our terms, at least. It gets picked up on, and the involved smart contracts are paused. So that happens about 15-ish minutes later. So around like 10:45 UTC, I think.
Yeah.
So at that point, the attacker has like done everything that we've talked about in the first 2 episodes. So in that 15-minute block is all of the first 2 episodes, which is, a little interesting to think about.
Yes.
And they have in their wallet on Sui the full value that they were able to extract. So then, at that point, the attacker switches to their post-exploitation activity, basically, right? So their goal at that point is, I can't get any more value out of the vulnerability because the contracts are paused. So now I need to switch to getting stuff out. And so, you talked about bridging out to Ethereum. They start that, by my count of the timelines, it's about 2 minutes after the contract gets paused. So relatively quickly to me, it seems like.
Yeah, they pivoted extremely quickly.
Yeah, around 10:47 UTC is when the first bridge starts going out.
Okay, so to pause you there, in case those that don't know, bridge is basically a way of basically having 2 different blockchain networks talk to each other. The reason why you need a bridge is because they effectively, under the hood, are just cryptographic entities, and they have different cryptography on each. So you need a translation layer between the 2. That's what a bridge does. So a bridge allows you to take your Ethereum and put it onto Sui, or Sui onto Ethereum, or onto Bitcoin network. These are all different networks that all have different cryptographic implementations. Therefore, you need some type of translation when you're moving one token between each other. So that's where the bridge comes in. You need to bridge your tokens out if you want to change it into a different currency and access it on a different network.
Bridges have featured in a number of previous episodes.
Oh my God. Everyone hates them. Apparently, the talk is people hate bridges because obviously the amount of security vulnerabilities they introduce.
Yeah, they're a bit of a flashpoint, obviously because like a lot of security issues happen at the point where money moves from one place to another, or value moves from one place to another, and bridges are like the mechanism that does that, right?
Agreed.
Bridges, I would also throw, I have this like recurring category of things that I feel like shouldn't exist but do exist, like not shouldn't in like a value, like shouldn't in like a logical way. I'm like, how is that possible? So bridges are something I would absolutely throw in the category of things that like just technically feel to me like they shouldn't exist but do. Like you can take a representation of a token on this chain and exchange it on a completely different chain on a completely different blockchain with the same guarantees of like
value,
the same kind of blockchain guarantees of integrity. Anyway, whatever. Okay, so first bridge starts going out 10:47, and then by my count, this is me like scrolling through the Sui blockchain and the Ether, Ether scan and all that. The last bridge goes out 7:89. Again, about 2 minutes later, 10:49. So no, sorry. Ooh, I'm wrong. I did not see the hour. Hour there. About an hour and 2 minutes later. Okay, that makes more sense. Is when the last bridge goes out. And there's a lot of bridging that happens. It's not like I have like 20K token of this and I can do it all at once in one shot. Bridging is like fairly distributed, and there's reasons for that. Bridges will have like a maximum value that you can put through at a time. And a lot of that has to do with the like liquidity that's available in the bridge. So like in order for the bridge to happen, kind of like a liquidity pool stuff, sort of like you need the tokens there to make the exchange happen. And so you can't just use like one shot, one bridge. You have to distribute it over a bunch and do it over time, which makes things difficult for the attacker, right? That's like a hurdle for the attacker to overcome.
That's an interesting point you've raised there. I thought the bridge limits, when I casually read about them, were to do with effectively security management, basically.
It could multiple reasons, I think.
It could be multiple reasons, but I'm willing to bet it's because of liquidity, because the way a bridge works is by exchanging a token value on one side and then on the other. And if you don't have enough on the other side, then you can't do the exchange. So I'm willing to get the primary reason, objective A, liquidity. Objective B, it slows down people when they try to exfiltrate large amounts of money. But I don't even think that was an intention of the design. I just think it's just because of liquidity. Oh, that's a shame. Go on.
Yeah. Okay, so then you talked about on the then they now have what they were able to get out on the Ethereum side, a certain amount on the Ethereum side, that 20K, I think, right? You talked about 20 million, I forget.
So we got 2,843 in one and 20K on another.
Yeah. Okay. So that goes to one. When they're bridging out, they bridge it all out to one Ethereum address, and then they transfer the majority of that value to a secondary Ethereum address. We can maybe speculate about why later. But then we're back on the Sui chain, and stuff starts happening there. So on the Sui chain, a while later, around 12:36 UTC. So we're at this point? We're about 2 hours after the attack, after the start of the attack. They transfer a bunch of the Sui from their original attacker address to a secondary attacker address. And then sometime around this event, the validators on the Sui network start blocking transactions from the attack address. So like, okay, but meta level, like we haven't talked very much about what happens after an attack in our podcast yet.
No,
I think that's partially because there's whatever reasons for that. I didn't understand it very well is probably one reason. But like it's interesting, and we'll get into this more. But like there's phases to how an attack happens in the crypto world. There's like the initial exploitation. There's usually a flurry of activity immediately after the initial exploitation from the attacker. And then there's a response from the network and from the stakeholders in the network to try to contain as much as possible. because I know we've like talked before a little bit about how like in crypto, when money's out the door, it's like gone, it's out the door.
Yeah.
There's a little asterisk on that.
There is now. There definitely is.
Which is that the network can start to fight back. And I think as things have matured and evolved, the networks have gotten more efficient at fighting back, and they've gotten more mechanisms with which they can use to fight back.
Yes. And that's what makes me so excited about what happened here in this episode, in terms of we're used to sitting there talking about, the velocity is on the side of the attacker. Well, the velocity goes both ways. They both have they can move quickly, but so can the network move quickly. And if they coordinate, and so this was fascinating.
And some networks move more quickly than others.
And some networks move more quickly than others, which is go on.
Isn't unrelated to how distributed that network
There we go. I was going to say the exact same thing. And we come back to our spectrum of centralization versus decentralized, or you can be very centralized and you can have clearer rules, or you can be more centralized, have more obscure rules, but which one is preferred, which one allows you to act quicker is up to you. And when do you need to act quicker in situations such as this? So let's talk about this, because from your notes, it says they created a deny list. And my understanding was that effectively this deny list technically allowed them to drop transactions.
Yeah. So like, again, we're going to keep calling back to previous episodes, build off of step before. We talked about the mempool before, right?
Yes, we have.
I'm sure I'm going to get some details here wrong, but that's okay.
It's okay.
We get some freebies after vacation.
Yes.
So the mempool is kind of like, we talked about it as kind of like a staging area in front of the blockchain where transactions sit and wait to be included in a block.
Yep.
By a node or a validator.
Validator,
In the SUI case, they're called validators. So it is up to the validator what transactions get included in the block from the mempool, right?
And that's where we saw it. We saw this in the front running stuff.
Yeah, they can choose. And this is where that whole MEV thing happens, right? Because the order that you construct transactions in can be valuable to you. And everything's valuable on the blockchain. The order of transactions can be valuable to you. Okay, so gosh, we're going to keep calling back to previous episodes. What a validator can do, what a validator can do is censor a transaction. If a validator chooses not to include a transaction in its block, it can drop it and not include it and censor that transaction. Now, in a highly distributed system, that's okay. Validators have that right. And some other validator will pick up your transaction out of the mempool later.
And that's how I say, and that's how a network becomes known as being censorship resistant. If the likelihood of it being possible for someone to drop your transaction and therefore it not happen is lower than it would be on another network, then that one's pretty much censorship resistant. However, if it's higher on that network, then you're looking at a Sonium situation. Well, kind of like a Sonium situation where censorship could be possible because it's relatively easy for the validators to coordinate amongst themselves. Well, this is where SUI got interesting, because obviously the whole network could see this attack happening, saw the amounts of money, knew where the wallets were, what the wallet details were, and they decided, okay, what we're going to do right now is we're going to stop them bridging off the network. They did that as a defense mechanism, obviously, because they know they have control over that network, whereas they don't have control over Ethereum or wherever else they were going to go. So what they did was, as Michael said, they looked at the mempool, they created a deny list on each of the validators, and they coordinated. More importantly, all the validators coordinated to drop the transactions originating from this one wallet, effectively rendering that wallet useless, frozen,
more or less. So like the deny list is, I mean, as far as I could tell from my notes that I did a while ago in the research here, this deny list is like a feature of the SUI module that runs these validators. So like, you know, you might have like there's reasons why you want this functionality, presumably, like, you know,
like now, like when 162
like now,
million,
for example, like you know, like implementing, like if you want to cooperate and implement a sanction, right? If you want to cooperate and implement like some AML stuff or whatever, probably, I don't know. There's like reasons to have this deny list. So yeah, it's like, you know, I think it's like literally on your validator, you have a config file, like, I don't know, YAML file or a JSON file or something with a list of addresses that are like, do not process transactions from these addresses. So the interesting bit that I actually don't know, I couldn't find in my research, and I don't know if it's known or not, is how this deny list gets published. Whether each validator keeps it themselves, and just chooses to add stuff to it or not, or whether there's like it truly does get published and validators can choose to pick it up from some source, or whether they share them with each other or whatever.
If it's like a CSR type thing, certificate revocation, CRL, certificate revocation list as well with like TLS, or if it's a decentralized coordination of that, or I see what you're saying. I actually don't know. Either way, if it's a file on your validator, you can still
I could see it being either way.
Yeah, exactly.
I could see it being either way.
And
it being useful to be either way. But anyway, point is, all the validators decided to add this, add the attacker's address or addresses to the deny list, effectively, freezing or censoring or whatever word you want to use.
Well, I want to go into censoring because that's the conversation we're having now. Sorry, we're 20 minutes in. Let's get to the first spicy conversation. And so basically what this then meant is it was now proven and shown beyond a shadow of a doubt that censorship is possible on the SWE network, which obviously is a decentralized network. Oh, yeah, Michael, well, sharp intake of breath. Go on.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay,
possible, yes. Possible, yes, of course. It does prove that it is possible.
Yeah, so there we go. And that's kind of the point I've got here written in my notes as the first flashpoint is this is a form of censorship. It's censorship by a group. The masses decided this was going to happen, and it wasn't the decision of one person. It was a coordinated action, but it is censorship.
And I think that's important. That
is a massive distinction. It's a massive distinction for me, and in some ways, as you'll see later, I won't even foreshadow it. I kind of agree with this ability, and the reason why I agree with this ability is because I am a strong believer. This is where we get into the philosophical part of this. Humans build systems to support human activity, not the other way around. Humans aren't here to support the system. So I'm never going to be one of these people that's dogmatic, say, no, we are decentralized. This should not be possible in any circumstance whatsoever, because no. But then what happens is when you have a circumstance like this, we're going to stick to the system rules just because, and we're all going to cut off our nose and spite our faces. That makes no sense. So if we can alter the system to support the human outcomes, which is we want this to be a trustworthy platform, we need to be able to show the world and also implement restitution when we see something crazy going on. A mistake was made, a bug in a library, this person exploited it and tried to steal. We need to be able to respond to that. Yes, we did censorship. It was group censorship, but I kind of agree with it. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I think the important distinction is, how does the censorship happen? And that's why I'm kind of interested in the specific mechanism of how this deny list gets published, I guess.
Got you.
That's one of the reasons that was a question in my head. Because I think when people say censorship, what they think of is one person, one authority publishing a ban. And that taking effect everywhere. Right. And there are crypto systems that are like that.
Yes.
Like there are crypto and ecosystems that have that character. This could be different. That's why I'm interested in the mechanism. This could be different. Another way that censorship can happen is that the community that is invested in the ecosystem takes coordinated action as an immune response to something bad happening on the ecosystem.
100, and that's to me what this falls into.
That's what it feels like. That's certainly what it feels like. And that is different because there the autonomy is in the community, whereas in the other circumstance the autonomy is in the censoring authority.
Authority,
So and then the follow on of that is that then the censorship decision can be different in different circumstances and at different points in time because the community priorities may be different or the event may be different or whatever, and it's a dynamic process each time
and
based on the coordinated action of the community.
Yeah, I'm going back on my soapbox, mate. Sorry. Yes, I 100% believe it should be. Like, if this system is here to support human activity in a digital way, in a trustless way, it must be malleable, because no system is going to be able to be at 100% foolproof. Otherwise, you and I wouldn't have careers. Like, at the end of the day, there's going to be bugs down the line, and we need a way to make sure that they're not, we said this, another call back in a previous episode, they're not catastrophic. Now, I can see the counterpoint to this being, okay, then how do we know it's stable? And it's like, well, when you have a certain mass of people that need to make a decision, just look at elections, for example. It's going to happen slowly. That's why they happen every 4 years, not every 2. It's not an easy thing. It doesn't happen quickly. And so my opinion is, yes, at the end of the day, censorship is possible. It's done by the group. Large enough groups slow things down when necessary and can speed things up when necessary. But at the end of the day, you still need the consent of everybody that participates in that system. And from what we saw, this was a grave enough threat to Cetus and even maybe Sui blockchain itself, such that drastic actions need to be taken. This wasn't silly money. This was $220+ million. That's not a joke.
Yeah.
So I kind of agree with the course of action that was taken here. And more important, I get you're wanting to know the technical details of the how, but I also agree with the why. The how, to me, I think we could probably figure out if we had longer on the podcast. We don't want to make this a long technical one, but I think we could probably reverse engineer it where, yes, it is a file, and the people then have access to the file, but also there's a network distributed list of the file, but then they can choose probably to accept or not.
Yeah, who knows, right? Yeah, it's going to be complicated, and some of the interesting bits are in the complicated parts.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe one day we can actually come back to that. Actually, I think that's actually quite interesting. I might look into that. But yes, so should this be so this is my first flashpoint question. Should this be possible in a truly centralized network? And my answer is yes, like this.
And I don't think there's any way that you make this, in a theoretical sense, impossible. Well, I don't know. Maybe that's a bit too strong. Like much larger, much more distributed. Like the reason the attacker wants to bridge to Ethereum is because it is, orders of magnitude more distributed than Sui is.
Yeah,
and there are mechanisms connected to Ethereum which will allow them to launder. Right.
Yeah.
So, could Ethereum do the same thing at this point in time? Unlikely, question. I assume. I don't know very much about this stuff. Maybe unlikely. Has Ethereum done something in the past similar? I think so, right? Wasn't there
they basically
rewind?
Yeah, they forked effectively. Are you talking about the fork in 2016, or are you talking about something more recent?
No, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, 2016 is where they forked, which was a big deal, because that time I think it was 40 million. Was it pounds? Because I was in the UK at the time. Maybe $40 million that was stolen, and they had to do a hard fork to reverse that.
Anyway, kind of interesting, like parallel maybe. But yeah, that's why the attacker wants to get to Ethereum to use those capabilities, and use the distributed higher level of distributedness or whatever, right?
Yeah. So after you've now got frozen wallets, for those who are still awake, we've now got frozen wallets.
So you got frozen wallets on Sui.
Yeah, with $160+ million in them.
And then you have still active funds on Ethereum.
Yes.
Okay, so what happens next? So then, what are we? May 27th. So how many days later is that? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 days later?
5 days, yeah.
Sui proposes a governance vote.
Hold on. Actually, no. I want to be
am I wrong?
Because this is the bit I read.
Please
correct. Cetus requests that a vote is put to the community, because I'm imagining frantically in those 5 days, Cetus and Sui are chatting. These are people behind these systems. They're chatting frantically about what to do. Now we've got this $162 million sitting in these wallets taken from Cetus. Cetus then requests that a vote is put to the community about an action. So I'm guessing Sui and Cetus came together and said, look, we know how this network technically works. These are the 3 courses of action we can take, or 2 courses of action we can take. And everyone was like, okay, well, this is going to be quite impactful to the network. And actually, it actually means changing some of the code of Sui itself. Let's put a vote. We can't do this as an authority. It's a decentralized network. we need to put a vote to the community. So Cetus asks Sui if they'd put a vote to the community, and Sui agrees to put a vote to the community. You guys are all screaming, what vote? Michael, what vote did they put to the community?
You might know more than I. Well, okay, so the vote was basically like my high level understanding of the vote was it's to return the stolen funds. So so take the funds that are in the attacker's address wallet, and put it in a trust. Essentially,
yes,
is that
that's
right?
technically correct.
That's controlled by a combination of, I think, Sui and Cetus and maybe something else.
Named individuals and people. So effectively what happened was the vote in its technical terms, if you go and look this up on chain, was for a protocol upgrade. What is a protocol upgrade? So Cetus calls itself, I hate the overuse of protocol in the blockchain world. It's a very overloaded term. Cetus itself is known as a protocol, but it obviously runs on a protocol called Sui. And that's the blockchain. It has its own way of doing things. So they wanted to basically do a protocol upgrade, which would allow them to do exactly what Michael just discussed, which is reverse or recover the funds and put them in a trust. So this literally meant this protocol upgrade, and why they need to put it community, is it meant actually changing the code of Sui in a special one-off case to take control of these tokens that are in a wallet. Anyone who's been paying attention to any of our episodes, your ears must have pricked up right now because you're like, hold on, wait, what?
Are you getting into your spicy question number 2?
I am getting into my question number 2. But hold on, I think I need to give more technical context now. I've realized. So effectively, what this alteration would do is basically allow for one wallet signature to be able to authorize transactions on the attacker's wallet's behalf. So wallets are just an abstraction of your public-private key pair. You need your private key to sign and own stuff, public key for people to send you stuff. They would be able to take ownership of a set of tokens with another private key. That's why they needed to do this code upgrade to the way Sui worked. There is no understating how big a deal this actually is. My tokens are supposed to be my tokens, and no one else is supposed to be able to get them back. So my spicy question, I've kind of written it here in a very reporty way, but does this set a negative precedent for the chain for the future? If so, for whom? Because at the end of the day, they've now proven that it is possible if the whole community decides to seize tokens from another person's wallet. Now, there were a bunch of fail-safes into making sure that this was a one-off, etc., and we'll go into those in a bit later, but I want Michael's initial reaction to what he thought when he saw this, because I'm guessing you saw this in your notes as well. And your discussion points around this one.
I think I don't see a huge difference between this step and the previous step.
Ooh, interesting.
Like if we're talking about like bridges being crossed, like the I don't know, Rubicon or whatever. You know what I mean? Like if we're talking about one way doors of kind of before and after decisions. I feel like this one maybe isn't as big a step as the previous.
Really? Interesting.
Because like if I'm going to completely freeze an address, what's the difference to me if the coins are still in that address or not?
So let me tell you how my silly brain sees this. I disagree, because if you can freeze my address, but those coins are still mine. Like you've now basically said, you've now isolated me.
Are they still yours? You can't use them.
I can't use them, but you've isolated me from the community. I've been kicked out of the village. Can't do anything. Can't talk to no one. Can't whatever. But I still have my hut, and the hut's useless because I'm not working with anyone else. I'm not able to barter or trade, but it's still mine. What you've now done is the villagers turned around and said, "Yeah, and everything in your hut." But no, but this is my sovereign right. So for me, this one felt more fundamental. I don't know, maybe it's just my ultra capitalist ways of thinking.
I think it depends a little bit on whether you see whether you see tokens as instrumental or as a thing in themselves. You know what I mean? Like if the important part of being on the blockchain is using the tokens for stuff, then I don't think there's a huge difference between these two steps, because
I suppose
not having them and not being able to use them kind of collapses into one thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think your opinion could be that
it's
the token itself is a real thing that you can really have. Look, I have that catchphrase about what everything being socially constructed or whatever.
Yes.
Like we're getting extremely close to
We're
me
getting
saying
very
something
close.
silly about that again.
No. That's what we're here for. This is what episode 3 was here for. We've earned it. And you're correct. And my point is purely theoretical because you can't use the tokens. So you know what you're doing here. You're not doing anything really. But when I read this and I researched this, I was like, wow, this is a big deal. Now,
it is a big step. I'm not saying it's not a big step, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is a big further step. But I think it's also like, in a way, does the mechanism I guess a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Does the mechanism of it make a difference? Because like the other way this could happen would be through a hard fork. Yeah. Like another way this could, for like theoretical possibilities of how to recover funds in this kind of situation would be a hard fork, which would have like similar
hard fork they wouldn't
and require similar coordination with the actors in the ecosystem.
Yeah, it would.
So I guess to you, would that be different? Because your tokens would still exist on the other fork.
Yeah, they would, and
you'd
still just wouldn't be able to engage.
Right.
I think it depends on the message you're trying to send to external observers. I think if you hard fork this thing, and now we've got 2 SUI blockchains and an old one, and that token is still there, but it has
classic SUI classic
SUI classic. People are going to be like, and I happen to know what SUI is going for. These new chains, these new breed of chains, Aptos, SUI, and so forth, they are partially also going after institutional adoption, and they're trying to show that they can roll with the bigger kids on the block, right? In terms of transaction throughput speed, integrity of the network, et cetera, and institutions need that. So the message, it's also about messaging as much as it is about technical capability or what's right here or the moral thing to do. So I agree that this mechanism is the most appropriate one, because what they wanted to do was show, look, there's a community of people that back this chain, and we can come together and do this thing in a responsible way. So does the mechanism matter? Yes, it does. But it still was a big deal to me because I'm like, well, those are my tokens in my wallet. How dare you reach into my wallet? You can cut it off, but you can't. And just to some of the fail safes that they did, which were quite clever, was they created the transaction that they were going to run in order to seize the tokens. They created what's known as a programmable transaction block, which is sweet talk for we can do a bunch of instructions. Same thing that allows flash swaps, actually. We can do a bunch of instructions and roll them all up into one transaction.
Atomically.
So yes, exactly. They did the transactions atomically, and then they hard coded so that it would only work for this wallet. It would only go to certain wallets, and everyone could see all that code and had a chance to inspect that code before they actually ran it. And then it ran once and it was gone. Basically, it was removed from the code, as far as my understanding. So for me, I was like, big intake of breath, looked at the fail-safes and was like, these are grown-ups.
Yes. So, I mean, I think one thing that does seem evident is there's huge amounts of thoughtfulness put into the actions
100%
from the main ecosystem players. It does not seem like in a panic response kind of mode. It seems in like a measured response kind of mode, sort of. Not sort of. Like, I agree. It's very thoughtfully done and trying to balance a lot of things. Yeah, I think one thing that does seem to be noticeable about the response from like the main ecosystem players like SUI is the amount of thought that is put into their actions in response.
Yes.
Like it could have looked very different and 100%. Much more simple, like freeze it, send it back to whoever, whatever kind of thing. But no, it went through all this, went through the governance processes. Yeah. It was very upfront and transparent what was going to happen and when and who and that sort of thing.
And this
which I thought was interesting.
I geeked out at this bit. Once I had the sharp intake of breath, then when I looked at the fail-safe details, I was like, no, this is crazy. And I've written a note here, like, I'm trying to think, and this is a rhetorical, no, it's not a rhetorical question, it's a question to you. I'm trying to think of a Web 2 equivalent. Is there a Web 2 equivalent, a fix that stops an attacker, undoes the damage, one-time instance with complete transparency to all of the end users? And I'm like, when your data goes out the door in Web 2, you're lucky to get an email from the CEO and a free Equifax subscription and told good luck and Godspeed. Like, I know there are more than one Justins with my exact passport number rolling around the world right now because someone got hacked somewhere 3 years ago, and I just don't know. It just hasn't come across me. I've never known of a Web 2. Once your data goes out the door in Web 2, yes, it's a lot slower and it's harder for them to monetize because obviously it's not a literal representation of value, but believe me, they monetize it. Like, there is no restitution for you as an end user, and more importantly, you don't even get to see, because they do, obviously, we do all our lessons learned, etc., inside these institutions, inside these big companies, and we're like, okay, what needs to be fixed? And then we hire some pen testers, and then we move on with our merry way. Like, I was impressed. I'm not going to say, but I'm just going to say.
I think this is a place where, like, my thinking and opinion on this has evolved over the course of the podcast, specifically, because I used to have that understanding basically flipped in my head, that, like, Web 3, it was harder to recover from attacks.
Yes.
And Web 2, it was easier to recover from attacks or whatever. Now I don't think that way as much anymore. I think it depends on the ecosystem and the environment. Yeah. But I think in some Web 3 ecosystems, the recovery story is actually, like, decent. It can certainly be better than Web 2. Yeah, because you know, once information is disclosed, the information is disclosed, and what you're trying to protect is the information while it's disclosed, right? But in Web 3, what you're trying to protect is, like, this store of value in a token, and that's an object on the blockchain, and that apparently does have mechanisms, or the ecosystems have evolved to have mechanisms by, you know, taking these knocks before to have these immune responses that do truly and really recover value, and not all the value, right? Like, there's still however many million worth of ETH that have not been recovered, certainly not recovered. And then, you know, how useful is that ETH to an attacker at this point? Because then there's an even further step of the response, right? The part of the response we haven't covered yet is on the ETH side, like what happens there, and how does value extraction work there? Which has also been evolving quite a lot recently. And is its whole own story, maybe its whole own episode. We talked about it a little bit. But
definitely. I think that would
basically, like, you can't just use these funds in the ETH wallet. Like, what they want to do is get, presumably what the attacker wants to do is get cash. Right.
That's
in whatever is valuable to them. And in order to do that, they need to go through a series of centralized points where there can be controls. Or there are some mechanisms that are more decentralized and do allow some, you know, opportunities to launder and cycle and whatever. But
100%.
So the recovery is not 100%.
No.
But it's more than 50.
Yeah, exactly. It's way more than 50. And it's also the transparency, because, like, for example, whenever you have an issue like this in the real world, well, this happened in the real world, you need to build trust back up. That is your number one priority, and being transparent about what happened and how you can fix it. And I was really impressed. You could go to the
I would put a little caveat on that.
Oh, go on.
That you need to build trust back up if trust is material to your business, which it isn't always in Web 2.
Not in Web 2 when you're a large centralized platform. Where are you going to go, mate?
But in Web 3, it does seem to be important because things are very portable.
It is,
and consumers are very portable.
Yes, 100%.
You know, people are always swapping stuff between different places and moving stuff around.
Assets on different networks, and so they engage with different networks. So I was super impressed with this. So for those of you who care, the vote was put to the community. Basically, what does the vote mean being put to the community? You have SWE tokens. You can go and buy SWE tokens at your neighborhood cropped crypto outlet,
ATM, Bitcoin ATM,
wherever. No, I'm joking. But basically, you buy SWE tokens online, and if you stake them, which is a whole other process where you just basically give them to a validator and earn interest for them to use them. The more stake a validator has, the more votes it has. Long story short, in this case,
proof of stake
network, clues in the name. In this case, validators staked out their position. You see what I did there? And said they were going to go yes or no. And so the network had like 7 days. People would move their stakes to whoever they agreed with. Basically, it's kind of like representational democracy. Validator is your MP. And you basically say, I like the way you're going to vote on this, I'm going to vote for you. And that's what happened. And the vote was passed overwhelmingly This is to recover the funds, by the way, not to freeze it, to recover it. 92% participation.
Yeah, well, so that's the interesting part. Like the freezing was not a community vote. The freezing was validator determined, or even more centralized, depending on the mechanism.
Yeah.
But the governance was you had time before the governance vote to stake your tokens with your representative. Yeah,
the validator that you agreed with.
Not 90%, I think.
So it was 92% participation, 90% who voted to agree with the action. So it was everybody of the network that could have participated basically did. That's an insane turnout. And then
the attacker probably couldn't stake their
no, they could not. That would have could you imagine? Actually, I'm just going to vote for no. So yeah, sorry, that maybe I didn't think of that. That's actually hilarious. Could you imagine? That would make the story even funnier. So yeah, and that kind of brings us to the conclusion of our episode in a way where it's just like lessons learned, technical governance, speed goes both ways, transparency always builds trust. That's what I feel.
The speed goes both ways is interesting because speed is also a pressure on the ecosystem, right? And speed is often a pressure that when it's really heavily applied, you trade off the distributed side of things.
Yes, you do. You don't get one without the other. Well, you can't have both, basically. Sorry.
Yeah, or like, you need some very clever thinking to have both.
Exactly.
Which is, interesting to think
It is very interesting. So this was actually fascinating. So it's funny you raised about, we should probably do an episode someday about the Ethereum one, because the Ethereum one is, those tokens are still, those wallets are still not able to be interacted with by any major chains that have any amount of liquidity in which you would be able to use them to withdraw cash. They are on a sanction list, and apparently the FBI is involved. And so the story is still ongoing. I imagine this won't be the last time we talk about this. We said the same thing with Bybit. Bybit, we're still going to let simmer some more to see what's happened there with the ransoms that they put out. And we'll probably come back to that further into, when autumn actually kicks in. But yeah, we will probably come back to this to find out what happens to the Ethereum, because if Ethereum keeps rallying like this, I can imagine law enforcement, because don't forget, law enforcement sees these tokens and just add them to their bottom line. So these tokens there is an incentive to get to that wallet. So we'll see what happens with the Ethereum run and see interest wax and wane in accordance with that. But basically, that is the Cetus hack all in one. So what did we learn from this? We learned that, number one, it's relatively simple bugs can be extremely devastating in very complex financial, decentralized financial environments. We also learned that DeFi is an absolute head screw, so to speak. Getting our head around those flash swaps took a while, but there are still very sharp cookies out there on the exploitation and the building side. It just depends on what your agenda is. And that even if you can, now we're at a point in Web3 maturity, and I think this for me is kind of the line in the sand. We're at a point in Web3 maturity where, yes, it was always a big issue to launder money, but you could possibly do it. But now with certain ecosystems, it kind of might be bordering on impossible. Nothing's impossible.
Difficult.
But it's
a lot of constraints.
It's a lot more
of constraints put on the attacker.
So yes, you can be super clever and you can take out hundreds of millions in seconds, but then you're going to hit a wall when you're more than likely going to hit a wall when it comes to actually offboarding that cash and offboarding those tokens, converting them into fiat currency and going about your merry way now. So for me, it's kind of made me, ironically enough, this was a crazy story that has kind of added to my trust in the Web3 ecosystem, and I'm cautiously optimistic about its future and its ability to onboard more users or attract more people through use cases. We'll come back to the whole thing about use cases, and as we know, as you guys know, as all of you, our listeners know, both Michael and I are product guys, so we always will be going to the products. DeFi is a product, it's just a product we don't care about, that's why we don't really talk about it much. But yes, I think the more products that come on and the more that trust is built with the technology, I think you might start to see people experimenting with different product use cases. Any last thoughts from you, Michael?
No, not really. I think I always have some last thoughts, I guess. I just I think what I like about this is just how complete a story this is. How, I do think that if you are interested in learning about Web3 and how security things happen on Web3, this whole Saga offers a lot to you to learn about.
Agreed.
And I think it's profitable to learn about it. So yeah, really good. Yeah, awesome.
It's good stuff. Good stuff. All right. Well, thank you for listening. And we'll be back in 2 weeks' time with a brand new episode. Yes, thank you for hanging out with us. Sorry for the delay. Catch up soon. Bye-bye.